Okay, so last time I talked about how budget should be structured on the revenue side, on the expenditure side, and then we were talking about long-term projects which can be significant for the improvement of the society and the tax base. So it generates budget deficit, and then we are funding this through government bond issuance. And I mentioned it also that we need domestic investors and also partially foreign investors if it's necessary. Uh, and also I mentioned the risk of foreign investors that their risk-bearing ability, their market sentiments, and the entire growth uh, environment of the global economy can uh, determine that actually uh, the or ability to find actually foreign investors, so their willingness to purchase these government bonds will be determined by these external factors. And I mentioned that the main investors for the public debt domestically will be households, companies whose savings are channeled in by the banking system, insurance sector, investment funds. And of course, we could say that, okay, but there is some direct, so let's add this here. Now, we can ask the question that what can possibly go wrong? So first of all, maybe there is a recession. What happens here that actually the economic output decreases? So let's say it shrinks to here. So it means that the budget deficit will be increasing here. So the next question is that, okay, but can we sell such amount of government bonds instantaneously on the market? Or maybe not instantaneously, but during the year as expenditures are appearing, then can we do this or not? Or what have to be done that we have to cut back the flow expenditure, so this gray area will be also smaller. What can we do? It just in this case we can generate a negative feedback. So this is can be called as austerity. So austerity measurements can generate a negative feedback because if the government's consumption decreases, then the business sector will lose some part of their market. So it creates a negative or declining economic output, which can generate also additional cut in public expenditures. So on one hand, you have to do this. On the other hand, we can see the costs of these actions. But still, there is the problem that can we sell this on the market? So can we say that, okay, we have higher deficit? And this is where foreign investors can come in. Because they can say that, okay, if the market is liquid enough, so the external funding environment is healthy. So it's just a country-specific issue that now our output is declining. If we can do it, then we can say that, oh, additional foreign investors are added, there is money on the table, who cares? The problem is that if it's not a country-specific crisis, if it's not a country-specific crisis, it can happen that actually foreign investors are starting to disappear. So let's say that they will not have this color anymore, they will be black. Yeah, so they are disappearing. And if what happens that, okay, the short-term debt expires in this year. And at the same time, so we have to renew this. But at the same time, we have to sell also this as in a form of short-term debt. So what will happen? That our debt structure will be changing soon and dramatically. So what was that before? Now it will be a bit different because we have this amount of debt and the remaining debt. How can we fund this? Actually, right now it's not a problem because this will expire in the future. The problem is that we need fresh money here. So if savings generation is not enough domestically, and at the same time we are not able to include new foreign investments because maybe they are running home because they have losses on their general portfolio, this can generate a crisis. It's much better to look on the data. Because something like this happened with Spain. So we can see that before 2007, actually the debt to GDP ratio was absolutely low. But then recession started. Okay, they had to bail out banks, which will be a next topic, but right now let's talk about that. Okay, there was a deep recession, so if you're looking on Spain GDP, we will see that yeah, it peaked here and in 2008, and after that it was declining. Which is sad for the government because obviously your tax incomes will also declining at the same time. And because you are dividing by GDP, obviously the decrease of the GDP will also generate higher debt to GDP numbers because the level of GDP or level of the debt remains the same with declining GDP. Obviously, this ratio will increase as well. But the problem was that also they needed additional funding because Spain public deficit was also really high. Okay, maybe we have to change this because GDP. Not public debt. Oh, come on. Public deficit. Budget deficit. So we can see that they were in near surplus, and after that it was falling back to 11%. So this is clearly the case that there was a huge budget deficit in this year. So in this case, if you are not able to sell, then hard times will start because you have to renew your debt somehow. And in this case, what can happen? That you have to renegotiate your debt. What can happen here? That first of all, it can be rescheduling. So that rescheduling means that actually this was the maturity structure, and now you say that okay, instead of giving you money for my expiring government bonds, I will give you 3-year government bonds. So we will pay with government bonds with longer maturity. In this case, still you have to be able to pay your interests. Until interests are paid, actually poorly, but you can do it. Or you can say you can ask for debt forgiveness. So in these circumstances, you can say that okay, I can pay 50% of this. So we are cutting all of our bonds into half. Okay, let's say that we would like to pay this back and this not. Not there anymore. Also, we are paying this thing, but not the entire half, so we are cutting this as well. And maybe we have more willingness at the 10 year because it's far away. So let's see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, we still have one here. Yeah. So in this case, we were able to cut our public debt in half, and we can be really happy. Just what happens? We are burning domestic investors' money away. So it means that at the minute or in the moment when we are saying that okay, we are cutting our public debt in half, then suddenly the banking system will suffer from the same thing, just their asset side. At least their investments into government bonds will be halved. So we can say that okay, but now so let's assume that people were purchasing this. So originally that was, it had this size, this has also this size, and okay, so let's think that that was the banks, and now banks are shrinking back, so they will have only this thing, direct ownership. It's also cut to pieces, insurance companies are also halved, so okay, let's move banks even further back because and investment funds will also suffer from this, so this is what remains only, and foreign investors are also halved, so let's say that this is what remains there. So obviously in this case domestic savings will be also halved. So at the same time the banking system can easily go to default. So at the moment when you are not able to pay your public debt, the financial system will freeze down. You're not able to take out any kind of cash from ATMs and so on. So it's a really problemless thing. But the problem was, or initial problem was, that actually the economic output was declining. So banking system will suffer from both. So if we are looking on the balance sheet of the bank altogether, asset liability side, so maybe in the past they had government bonds, also they had loans for the public, for the corporate sector, and also they had loans to households. And on the liability side, we can see here so well known bank deposits. And also, banks can issue some bonds. So let's say that and also to cover the losses we have equity here. So this is under normal regime. So what happened with this balance sheet under a stress period? So let's say that we are cutting. So first of all, there is a recession. So obviously, loans to companies, some of them will not pay at all because these projects were going to default, so these companies are not with us anymore, and some percentage of households can be defaulted because they are losing their jobs, so they're not able to pay anymore. So in this case, we can see that we are losing 3 points. So the problem is that, okay, but the equity is this. So if you are emptying out and still there is one more, then actually bank bonds will also lose a component here. And this means that the bank also defaults on their debt. Or they will not start to pay deposits, but in this case, depositors will run the bank and they have to close down their operations immediately. So this is a second problem. So how can we bail out? In this case, we can say that, okay, to avoid this situation, so it's bankruptcy. What happened here? Because they were running out of equity. So to avoid this, we can say that, okay, let's have consolidation. So they will bail out the bank, which means that there will be no bankruptcy because the missing component, let's put it back here, the missing component will be covered by the new owner of the bank. So let's say that the state will purchase three items in the bank, and obviously one will be lost because of the recession, but still the remaining two will be sufficient enough to withstand against further losses. And it means that the amount of government bonds will increase at the asset side. So they are investing all the new money to government bonds because they are liquid. But the problem is that if they are doing this, actually you have to so until it's coming back right. So obviously you have to collect money somehow, and maybe the state can do it. So sometimes there is an example for that they are creating government bonds from nothing to put that on the asset side, and that's why they can define it as an equity on liability side. But yeah, so you can see that it can be tricky. So maybe if you have to include the bond markets, it means that the amount of your public debt will increase. So let's say by these are the bank bailout bonds here, because you needed fresh capital. So until the market is not stressed, it's highest, yeah, normal, then still you can say that okay, I can do this. But if the market is not stressed already, then actually what can happen that okay, today I saved the bank or the banking system, and that's why the economy. But if not, then actually I generated a public default. This is actually what happened or nearly happened in Spain. So if you are looking on the long-term government bond yields, we can see that yields are started to increase. Okay, it's not seems to be not that dramatic, but at that time it seemed to be. And after the state was consolidated, then we can see that now it's healthy. So let's see the Greek case because it's much more remarkable. So yeah, this is when you can say that okay, market participants has no willingness to purchase government bonds, or if they have willingness, then they are doing it in a really high yields. So top yields were 30% or something like this, and after that it was cut back. But once they struggled to deal with the European Union because they had no willingness to accept the criteria of getting the next loan, then it jumped back. So it had huge costs for the Greek society. So we can say that yeah, this was a lot of money. But we're talking about it just years, so it's just a part of the money. But come on, if you are spending this money on schools and people, then on human capital for your present and future taxpayers, then it can generate benefits. In this case, it just lost money and poor investment. So yeah, this bank bailout can be a problem. And if there is a public default, so this unfortunate process continues and you are not able to bail out the banks because at the same time you are also going to default because you have not enough tax income, so there will be this 50% debt reduction, then actually your households are starting to lose their deposits as well. So what will happen in this case? What will happen that you will have really angry depositors, and what happens that also you are undermining the trust of the society. So what will happen here that in the future they have no willingness to invest their savings in the local banks or in the local financial infrastructure or in the government, then it will generate capital flight. Which means that these savings which were invested in the past, happily, now it will be invested in foreign banks like banks in Western Europe, banks in the US, because they are safe, secure, and if the banking system needs liabilities, then they are not able to take up or collect bank deposits from domestic uh, households. They have to take up it as loans from foreign banks. So still you are using completely your same money. It can happen just with the intermediary of a foreign bank, and it means that you are increasing this problem here. That you are building in more and more fractions when your financial system or machine can break because market sentiment, external environment, risk bearing, and so on will build in more and more. So that's why you are not messing with public default. Because it's really hard to come out from this cycle. Obviously, you can say that, oh, come on, we have IMF to deal with this. So IMF, what we'll do here is that they would like to avoid the case of debt reduction. It's only used as a worst case scenario. So what will happen under an IMF support package? That instead of short-term loans, usually, okay, so some part of your debt will be, let's take this. And let's say that small from everything will be taken or provided by the IMF. You are still keeping some of your, or most of your short-term debt, some part of your long-term debt. Just in the middle there will be an IMF loan, and let's give, okay. Why? Because if an IMF provides loan, so this is the International Monetary Fund. Let's put this here. So first of all, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is a non-profit financial institution of the United Nations. So it's actually a non-profit bank owned by the United Nations. And since it's a bank, then if they are providing loans, it's not coming from nowhere. Actually, they are collecting loans, so they have debts towards their member states. So to save a country, it means that they have to collect some loans, for example, from the US. They have to collect some loans from Japan. Also, they have to collect some loans from European countries. Also, they are collecting some money from China. Also, they are collecting some money from Saudi Arabia, and so on. So there are many donor countries. But it's not an aid. So this loan have to be paid back because actually it means that these donor countries are issuing government bonds to provide this money what was collected by bond issuance to the IMF. So it's absolutely not charity. Uh, Actually, they are increasing their public debt because in this case they can uh, avoid the further spread of a crisis, because if this country goes to default, then the next country goes to default, so it can have a regional uh, effect. So that's why their public debt will increase. So that's why when some politicians are saying that we don't want to pay back the IMF loan, it's the craziest thing, because in this case you can make all the major economies angry. So don't do that, please. Yeah. So after that, we have one thing to do here, and this is to say that yeah, but how can I define that a country have likelihood to go to default or not? So mostly you can look on long-term yields. So if these yields are high, then yeah, it's a good indicator. Also, you can look on ratings, credit ratings. So for example, there is Moody's, Standards and Poor's and so on, but let's see, Standards and Poor's. Actually, on their website, we can see that, oh, there are corporate bonds, banks, investment funds, and so on and so on. But let's see governments, and sovereign, and then we can see here many different countries. So let's see Germany. Which is located at G. Oh, okay. Then let's not see Germany. So Germany credit rating. Accepting cookies in progress. Ah, no. Okay, so not Standards and Poor's, but at least Fitch Ratings can provide us some data, and we can see that AAA. If it's AAA, then it's the most secure. What can happen there? So, okay, let's look for France. Okay, maybe now it was not working this way. Also, in this case, the case of the Fitch, it's only AA. It's still good enough actually until you are rated as A, then it's an investment grade. Okay, let's see the US. Now still we can say that AAA, so usually or AA plus. So it's somewhere between AAA and AA, but it's good enough. Okay, let's say Hungary. Credit rating, then we can see it's in category B. Category B is not it's still good, just it's riskier good. So this is the medium because you know that there is rating A, B, and C. D is when you are in a state of default. C is when it's risky. It's absolutely risky. And the B is the mediocre level. It has some risk, but actually the probability of default is still low. And these countries can pay the interest and renew their capital, so they are more fragile than the robust United States or Germany, but you can live with that. Also, if you are looking at Poland in the region, we can see that, oh, it's A, simple A, so it's still good enough. Then let's see Brazil. It's also in triple B, so it's triple B is right comes right after simple A, so it's the positive end of the scale. South African Republic, we can say it's also triple A. Let's see Russia, it's triple B, and let's see Nigeria, for example. It's double B, B plus. Argentina. This is not that great, so actually we can see that it's triple C, which is risky. So actually you can use ratings as indicators for these occasions. And last topic for us for this semester is that what kind of models are available to make or form a pension system. So actually pension system, because you will able to see that actually half of the general budget is related to pension payments, so it's really important in Europe as well if you want to maintain a modern society. And because people get old. And okay, retirement age matters because right now in Europe usually it's 64 years after that you are going to retirement. In the 90s it was much more like 60 years or even lower. Nowadays they are increasing it because come on, if lifespan expectations are increasing, then you can work more. So yeah. So even there are rumors that in the future it can be increasing to 60. So our generation will work a lot. But let's see that what can we expect here. So there are different pillars. It was defined by the World Bank in the mid-90s. Actually, it depends on the country and it depends on the period again that which mix are they putting together. So in some countries we can find these pillars. Some pillars are missing in other countries. So each of them has their own focus and preference. So there can be a zero pillar. It means that if you had any kind of labor income and you were paying pension contribution, something in the past, then if you are reaching retired age, then you can get something for the government. So it's some sort of money, so it's at least you are maybe not starving so much a lot. First pillar is the pay-as-you-go system. So it means that it's based on the payments of the actively employed people. So it's a cash flow based system. So people are earning money, they are paying the pension contribution, and then this money will be paid to the retired people. Obviously, this system is stable until there is significantly more people employed than in pension system or in retired. And because if the amount of people who are retired is increasing, then this system will require additional cash flows from the general government. So you start to use tax incomes also to support the pension system. And this is the problem, and actually amount of young people is increasing in the society, and because people are living longer, which is a nice thing, but in this case it's a disaster because actually it increases pension payments. So actually when after the Second World War, pay-as-you-go systems were really popular because it was generating huge surpluses for the governments because they were collecting way more money as uh, mm, pension contributions than it had to be paid out as pension revenues for pension people because there were not so many old people. So it was a cash cow. And now when they have to give it back a generation later and decades later, then obviously we can say that maybe we should step back and we should go to funding the model and so on. So it's a bit disgusting, but from economic or financial point of view, we can understand it that okay, it's generating deficit. Third pillar, mandatory funding. It means that you are working, you are paying your pension contribution, and this money will be accumulated at the pension fund. This fund can be private, it can be public, it depends on the country and the era. But actually, when you are going to retirement, then you will live from the money what you were able to accumulate. So it means that they will purchase government bonds, they will purchase shares, they will purchase something, so they will invest the money somehow, and then you will live from the capital and also from the returns which were accumulated during this time period. And it's a really nice thing because it actually generates additional investments for your economy. Okay, the part which was used to purchase government bonds, it's also really useful because it stabilizes your government bond market, so it's stabilization function. But on the other hand, if there is lots of money on the stock markets, which can be invested, then companies are going there and they are using it and hopefully they are growing. So actually this investment can generate economic growth. So it's a positive feedback. Yeah, the problem is that if you are unlucky and you go to retirement when the market is in recession, then it can eat up. So recessions usually can eat up some percentage of pension savings. In each crisis, you can find articles that, oh my God, pension savings were, some part of it were lost, so maybe pension funds were losing 20% of their investments. Just usually the same journals are forgetting to say next time when there is the market is growing that actually then yeah, but later on they were able to recover it and even grow it further. So yeah, but in the mandatory funded system you have to pay this, you have to do this. There is a volunteer funded system. Actually you can do it if you want, so maybe you are part of the pay-as-you-go system and next to it you have a volunteer funded pension fund. It can happen, actually it's following the same logic like the mandatory, just in this case it's not mandatory. And the last pillar is individual savings, family. So when you are completely on your own, you are able to live what you were able to collect, and this is when the state is not mm, operating well. So come on, state should be, if we are they are considering you as a taxpayer worthy enough, and you are reaching the age when you are not taxpayer anymore, then who cares about you? So it's a really really strange and alienated state logic. Okay, we can find many countries who are doing this, but as a European, I can't understand. Okay, so that was all for this semester. I hope you enjoyed this and see you next year.